We are almost ready to get started. All right. Look at that. I even got YouTube up and working this week. Small miracles. Okay. I have one more thing to do, and then we are going to begin services in 1 minute. I really don't want new things to install during services. Thank you. Okay.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom. Doing all right this evening?
Hi, Jim.
Yes. All right. Officially, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I am so glad that everyone is here and on Zoom. We are going to celebrate Shabbat together. I know the last few days for me have been a whirlwind. I hope, well, if you have tried to contact me in the last 2 days, I didn't have a phone because my phone died and I lost pretty much everything, including access to my work email. So if you've sent me anything or your friends have sent me anything in the last 2 days, I likely have not received it. So I am grateful on one hand to be reconnected to the world of technology. And on the other hand, as every week presents a new technological challenge, I am waiting for a time when I will be able to take a technology Shabbat as well as a Shabbat of finding peace and rest in general. So I am going to share our service in just a second as I open it. And I'm going to mute everybody on Zoom. And if you're in the sanctuary and would like to see the slides that are being displayed, Jim has the right idea he's got on his phone. Otherwise, if you would like to use a prayer book, I have all the page numbers ready for us to do services that way as well. Just as a reminder, as we're joining together across our spaces, as I announce cues for our service to be seated or for arising for certain prayers, I invite you to consider that invitation as rising in body or in spirit to acknowledge all of our capabilities. And I hope that everyone finds our service and our time together this evening to be meaningful, and we are going to begin. We're going to start on page 126. I begin with a prayer of gratitude for all that is holy in my life. God needs no words, no English or Hebrew, no semantics and no services, but I need them. Through prayer, I can sense my inner strength, my inner purpose, my inner joy, my capacity to love. As I reach upward in prayer, I sense these qualities in my Creator. To love God is to love each other, to work to make our lives better. To love God is to love the world God created and to help work to perfect it. To love God is to love dreams of peace and joy that illumine all of us and to bring that vision to life. We'll continue on page 128, singing the words from Psalm 133, Hine Matov, how good it is for all of us to be together this evening. Continue on page 130, joining together in the words of Psalm 95 and 96, Lechu Neranana, giving thanks to God for the gifts of God's creation. continue welcoming Shabbat, joining together and singing the words of Lecha Dodi on page 138. We'll join together in verses 1, 2, 5, and 9, and as we reach the final verse beginning with Boi v'Shalom, we'll rise to face the entryway to welcome Shabbat as a bride. Ya la 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 Lecha Dodi, ya la 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 Likrat Kala, ya la 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 B'nei Shabbat, B'nei Shabbat Nekavela, Shamor v'Zachor, V'Nikor Echad, continue welcoming the ministering angels, the angels of peace, to bring us a sense of Shabbat peace as we join together on page 142, singing Shalom Aleichem. We are going to kindle our Shabbat lights. So if you have candles at home that you'd like to light along with us, please feel free to get them now. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishanu b'mitzvotav, b'tzivanu, lehadlik ner, shel Shabbat. We'll continue on page 144. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בגלה, ובזמן קריב, ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר, יתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקדושה בריחו, לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירן בעלמה, ויאמרו אמן. We'll rise for our call to prayer as we turn to page 146. continue on page 149 at the bottom. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv aravim. And on page 151 at the top. As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. We'll rise for Shema on page 152 and 153. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Please be seated. We'll continue on page 154. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha ve'hayu ha'devarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'beitecha u'belechtecha b'derech u'v'shochbecha u'v'kumecha u'kshartam le'od al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kedoshim le'elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hodseiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem. On page 157 at the top, standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. We continue with our prayer for freedom and redemption, Micha Mocha, on page 158. We continue on page 161 at the top. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. Continue with our tefillah, beginning on page 164, and we'll continue on even-numbered pages, and I'll invite everyone to please rise. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi agid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chastei Avot v'Imahot, U'Mevi Geula Livnei B'neihem, Leman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Be'ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechaye HaKol Atah Rav Lehoshia, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofech Olim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Mi chamocha ba'al gevurot, umido melach, melech memid, umechaye, umatzmiach Yeshua. Ne'eman ata lehachayot hakol, Baruch ata Adonai, mechaye hakol. On page 171 at the top. Days pass and the years vanish, and we walk sightless among miracles. God, fill our eyes with seeing and our minds with knowing. Let there be moments when your presence, like lightning, illumines the darkness in which we walk. Help us to see wherever we gaze that the bush burns unconsumed, and we, clay touched by God, will reach out for holiness and exclaim in wonder, how filled with awe is this place, and we did not know it. Blessed is the Eternal One, the Holy God. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh. Please be seated. We'll continue on the top of page 173. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai mikadesh hashabbat. On the top of page 177. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha na'eh lehodot. And we'll continue on page 178 with our prayer for peace. Shalom Rav. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Chasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Chasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki atahu Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Chasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Chasim Leolam. Chasim Leolam. Chasim Leolam. We'll take a moment for our own quiet thoughts and prayers. Yehiyu leratson imrei fi v'hegion libi lefanecha Adonai Tzuri V'goali Yehu leratzon imrei fi v'hegion libi lefanecha Adonai Tzuri Adonai Tzuri V'goali We devote the next few minutes of our service to honor or to think of those who, are in need of a prayer of healing. We think of our loved ones who are in need of a prayer of healing of body, of mind, or of spirit. If you are on Zoom and you'd like to add someone to our prayer for Misha Berach, our prayer for healing for those who are in need of a prayer of healing, please fill their name in the chat, and I'll read them in a minute. And if you are in the sanctuary and you'd like to add someone's name to our prayer for healing, as I look your way, please say their names. Esther Greenwald, Ursula Hartunian, and Julie Benzino. We say together, Baruch atah Adonai Rofeh HaCholim, blessed is God, who brings healing to those who are in need of a prayer of healing. We'll join together on page 371 for Misha Berach. Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishe Berach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. last week, for those of you who were here and remember what I said, I was kind of talking about how the world felt really heavy. Great. Sorry about that. That will not happen again. All right. How the world felt really heavy, and particularly with respect to trying to honor myself and my identity, while also existing in a world that has tried to, one, tell me how I should think about certain things, in particular the conflict as it existed in Israel, but also with respect to how people perceive anti-Semitism. And it kind of pushed me in a direction this week because something interesting happens this week. Namely, Moses in the Torah portion, Baha'alotcha, is challenged. It's one of the many times that he's challenged by the people of Israel. Moses is confronted by the people who are complaining that they are no longer getting free food in the land of Egypt, and complaining that when they were slaves in the land of Egypt, they had access to all sorts of things like onions and leeks and even an abundance of fish. And Moses doesn't deal with that interaction. I thought. I printed out something specific, and instead I printed out a whole thing. Anyway, so this is what the Torah tells us. The Torah explains, the riffraff in their midst felt gluttonous, craving, and the Israelites wept, and they said to Moses, "If only we had meat to eat. We remember the fish that we got for free in Egypt, the cucumbers, melons, leeks, and onions, and garlic. Now we're all shriveled up, and there is nothing but this manna to look at." And Moses, he looks at this, and he says, did I not copy that part? No, I saw just on the, I'm sorry. I'm like totally scatterbrained right now. Moses responds, he says, and he doesn't respond to the people directly, rather he turns to God, and he says, "Why have you dealt ill with your servant? And why have I not enjoyed your favor, O God, that you have laid the burden of this stubborn people upon me? Did I conceive this people? Did I bear them, that you should say to me, 'Carry them in your bosom as a nurse carries an infant, to the land that you have promised their fathers on oath? Where am I to get meat to give this people? I cannot carry all of this people by myself. It's too much for me. If you would deal with me in this way, I would rather you kill me. I beg you, and let me see no more of my own wretchedness." One of the things that I think this piece of the Torah portion is really trying to do, and it goes a little bit beyond just the section that I read, is that even in the midst of things that seem really challenging, that there's often another story, or at least a recognition of something incomplete in the things that we read. So it just so happens that the follow-up to this particular part of the Torah portion is that God works with Moses and figures out a plan of delegation to alleviate some of the responsibility that Moses is feeling that falls upon him. What is also really interesting about this Torah portion, not exactly in relation to this section of the Torah portion, but in the Torah portion, the rabbis have a debate about a particular set of phrases related to the presence of God being in the midst of the people of Israel as they're wandering in the wilderness. These three verses, which are about whether or not that God is resting on the tent as a cloud or is rising up so that the people are supposed to either settle or go about on their way. The rabbis say that these three verses actually represent a kind of potential that exists in storytelling. The potential of the story that you didn't choose to say out loud. In fact, the rabbis are so convinced that these three verses, which again seem totally out of place in context of the Torah portion, are actually an entire book of the Torah. It's only 85 letters, really, when you look at it. But the rabbis in the Talmud say, because of these three verses, that there are really 7 books of the Torah. There's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers up until chapter 9, verse 15, and then Numbers chapter 9, verse 15 through 17, and then the rest of the book of Numbers and the book of Deuteronomy. There are 7 books of the Torah. And those 3 verses, these verses that are really about whether or not God is dwelling directly on the tent, telling the people to settle, or rising up so that it's letting the people know that it's time to go, that there is within rabbinic literature this idea that there is an entire story of the people of Israel that should have happened but didn't. Anyhow, as I was thinking about last week and how the tone that I kind of set, which was, I think, super important, there's also a problem that we have in our existence in this world of conflict, and that is when we see things in the news in particular, we're usually only seeing one lens or one perspective of something. We've kind of created for ourselves a kind of echo chamber of social media and other things. And so what I wanted to do is to share with you a kind of summary of a longer podcast that I heard this week. I started listening to fairly recently, but just before the most recent conflict in Israel and the Palestinian territories, a podcast called The Branch, which is a podcast put together by Hadassah, which is an American women's Zionist organization. But one of their things that people don't typically think about when they think about Hadassah is that Hadassah's founding mission was all about making sure that Jews and Arabs could live together in the land of Israel peacefully, and that they would all be treated as the state of Israel emerged with dignity and respect for each other. So much so that even when you look at the employment rate and the physician rate within Hadassah hospital system, 30% of physicians in the Hadassah hospital system are Israeli Arabs, and the population of Israeli Arabs in Israel is only 20%. So there's a disproportionately high number of Arab doctors in the Hadassah hospital system precisely because they're trying to get people to coexist and be treated with dignity and respect. But this story in particular struck me because of an image that it used related to the Passover Haggadah. So this story takes place in Jaffa. The story was told, the title of the story is called Arab Jewish Women's Choir Challenges the Cycle of War, and it was written by Dinah Kraft. And it takes place in Jaffa. So Jaffa also in Israel is one of the cities today where there is a pretty significant blending of Jewish and Arab culture, which leads to some interesting challenges. But within that blend of people, there's actually very little blending that takes place. So this is a really kind of unique story. So Tuesday nights are choir practice nights for the Reina Choir and for Lubna Rifi and Rakefet Lapid and their fellow members of the only choir in Israel made up of Arab and Jewish women. It's a sacred time. They make a point to never miss it. It does not matter if there's food cooking on the stove or children asking for help with homework. You do not miss Tuesday. You know, it's like oxygen, says Lapid. But Israel has just been through a war, another cycle of violence that they sing about and lament as feeling never-ending and merciless. Because of the violence, 2 Tuesday nights were missed. It was too dangerous to meet. Instead, those nights and others over the 11-day span of fighting were spent in fear in bomb shelters, safe rooms, or stairwells, wondering when air raid sirens signaling another barrage of rockets from Gaza might sound. Violence also erupted on their doorstep in Jaffa, in fist-to-fist clashes and other brawls between Jews and Arabs, part of a wave of unprecedented violence sparked by the broader tensions and fightings. The Reina Choir sings a range of songs from lullabies to feminist tunes, but one song has become their anthem. It's their rendition in Hebrew and Arabic of the traditional Passover song Chad Gadya, with a punch-to-the-gut surprise ending that prompts everyone who hears it to confront and question the heartache of living in what feels like endless conflict. When I visited them in late April, fragments of the previous 2 nights of conflict swept the streets of Jaffa. There were clashes between Arab youth and the police, and that spate of violence dominated the women's conversations as they gathered ahead of practice. What no one knew then was that violent bursts turned out to be a harbinger of the street fighting and mob violence that followed across Israel's mixed cities where Jews and Arabs lived together. The ancient port of Jaffa, which is part of Tel Aviv, is one of them. At its worst, the fighting in Jaffa left 2 Arab children burned and a firebomb tossed into the window of their building. Lapid and Rifi, who both live in Jaffa, like the rest of the women in the choir, met in the soprano section and soon became best friends. At first impression, they appear an odd couple. Lapid is a lanky, outspoken Jewish woman, and Rifi is soft-spoken with a gentle, nurturing nature. They explain that Chad Gadya was born out of another time in crisis. In 2008, Reina Choir had just formed as a choir, and the women, Jews, Muslims, and Christian, who came from a mix of socioeconomic backgrounds and political leanings, were still getting to know one another. The first war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza had recently broken out, and Mika Dani, the choir founder, decided that they could not sing the joyful Palestinian wedding song that they had planned on learning. Instead, she pulled out Chad Gadya and began to teach it to the women. It's a version by an Italian composer and was translated into Hebrew by Chava Alberstein, a famous Israeli singer and songwriter. She had added a verse in the end which struck Dani as particularly poignant for the moment. In the verse it says, "So what has changed for you? What has changed?" And for everyone it might not be familiar with what I'm talking about, Chad Gadya is the poem where we begin with my father buying a kid, and then the cat ate the kid, and the dog bit the cat, and so on and so forth until we come to the angel of death. And one of the symbolic ideas related to this poem that comes at the end of the Passover Seder is related to this idea that things are constantly changing in the world, and that we should always hold out hope that one day the Holy One, blessed be God, will come to make redemption for all people in the world. However, in this it is a song that acknowledges that things are changing all of the time and remaining hopeful. But this version of Chad Gadya, it says, "So what has changed for you? What has changed? I have changed this year, and in all the other nights of the year, all the other nights I asked 4 questions. But tonight I have another question. When will the cycle of madness end?" The women sing the song, which is all about a circle of violence in Arabic and Hebrew, starting with a goat that was eaten by a cat. Rifi and Lapid both see the song as the perfect vehicle for them to address this conflict. It's about asking, Lapid says, what's going on? Why are we going on with this cycle of horror? Chad Gadya was the beginning of saying, we are saying something with our singing. We are saying something with our sitting together. Rifi adds, to me the song, although we sing it like a million times, every time like we're on the stage, I really have to hold my tears back because I can see how emotional people get when they hear us, when we see their faces in the crowd, that this song touches them. The women of the choir have built measure by measure through new lyrics learned and harmonies mastered, a community bound by their determination to sing and sing together, even in the face of so much division and hatred. They're still singing Chad Gadya because the endless cycle of bloodshed and harm seems to keep finding another goat to devour. The Rana choir voices rise up in a call to action to shake ourselves out of our own complacency and stupor and search for a better way, one of listening and harmony. In the world that we live in, where we see so many things, or people try to show us so many things as black and white, things that are diametrically opposed, this is only one story of about 40 or so stories on this podcast that are all devoted to people who are working in Israel on the ground to make life for each other better. I am hoping that as we move forward in the world, that more people like this choir, like an organization called Hand in Hand, which is a relatively new school system in Israel that is hosting Arab and Jewish children together in the schools, that Hadassah Hospital, that those are the voices that we find hope with as we look to solve the problems that exist in that part of the world. Shabbat Shalom. We're going to continue with Aleinu on page 586, and I'll invite everyone to please rise. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'teit gedula liotzer bereshit, shelo asanu kegoye haratzot, velo samanu kemishpachot adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'goralenu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. On page 591, may we gain wisdom in our lives, overflowing like a river with understanding, loved each of us for the peace we bring to others. May our deeds exceed our speech, and may we never lift up our hand but to conquer fear and doubt and despair. Rise up like the sun, O God, over all humanity. Cause light to go forth over all the lands between the seas, and light up the universe with the joy of wholeness, of freedom, and of peace. V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. We devote the next few moments of our service to honor the memories of those we have loved and lost, holding in our hearts first David Cochran, for whom we are in a period of Shloshim, and also honoring the memory of those for whom this Shabbat and this week were a yahrzeit, or an anniversary of their passing. Jerry Kramer, Dr. Mordechai Nachman, Ann Ross, Emmanuel Rothschild, Dr. David Schlein, Rose Okun, Alexander Harris, Rose Rose, J. William Bolton, Ann Cohen, and Benjamin S. Immershine. If there are loved ones you're holding in your hearts that you would like to mention their name for Mourners Kaddish in Zoom, if you'd add their names to the chat, I'll read them in a moment. And if there's anyone you're thinking of in the sanctuary and you'd like to say their name, please feel free to do so as I look your way. we say Zichronam Livracha, may the memories of our loved one who have come before us be for a blessing. We'll join together in Mourner's Kaddish on page 598. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma Divra Chirutei v'yamlich Malchutei, B'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala v'zman kari v'imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mivarach Le'olam U'almei Almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei d'kedusha b'richu le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav Hu Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu ve'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru Amen. May the one who creates peace in the heavens on high bring peace to us here on earth, to all Israel and all people of the world, and comfort to all those who are in mourning. Together we say, Amen. Please be seated. We only have a couple of announcements. I feel like we've had so many congregational programs over the last couple of months that only 2 slides of announcements is really something. This coming Wednesday, June 2nd, is our last session for the school year of Living a Jewish Life, our Intro to Judaism class. We'll be learning about Jewish ideas around death, and since it's the conclusion, the last class, we'll also have a little conclusion, or we'll talk about what's next for people in their learning. And the other announcement that I have is for our next book club, which is June 23rd, a little less than a month away, Wednesday at 7:30. We'll be joining to read to talk about the book Night in Shanghai by Nicole Moniz. In this stunningly researched novel, Nicole Moniz not only tells the forgotten story of black musicians in the Shanghai jazz age of the 1930s, but also weaves in a historical tale of Jewish refugees and Holocaust heroism little known in the West. One of the things that I also want to do, because it was something that both Danielle Semprola, the president of our congregation, and I felt really bad about afterwards, is to acknowledge that a lot of the programs that you have seen over the past year, and really since I've been here as the rabbi, have been put on by a lot of hard work by our membership committee, led by Pat Cohen. And we made a huge mistake by not saying thank you for all of that hard work and acknowledging Pat and the membership committee for all of their work in this particularly hard year. So I want to now publicly say thank you to Pat and to all of the members of our membership committee for their hard work, because I think that that's important, and it's important to do teshuvah publicly when you can. So it was not a conscious mistake. Both Danielle and I thought the other was going to say it, and we just didn't, and then never corrected it in the moment. So there you go. So those are the announcements that I have. We're going to say Kiddush and blessing for our children, and Motzi. I know I have a challah waiting for me at home that I'm excited for. But for first Kiddush, we'll join together. If you have something to say Kiddush at home. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen l'chaim. And for our kiddos who are here, and for those who are not with us, but with us in spirit, we say, Yisimcha Elohim K'Ephraim B'chi Menashe, May you be blessed like Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Yesimech Elohim Kisara, Rivka, Rachel, V'Leah. May you be blessed like the mothers of our people, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. We wish for all of our children to always strive to be the best versions of themselves, and we bless them with these words from our Torah. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May God's light shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God's presence always feel close to you, and may you always be blessed with the most important gifts of wholeness and peace. Amen. And we're going to join together in saying Motzi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. I wish I had a challah here, but I know it's at home. We're going to conclude our service singing Oseh Shalom, a prayer for peace, and then I will unmute everybody to say hello. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I'm inviting you all to unmute.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom, Kristen.
How are you?
Okay.
A long time no talk.
I know.
Right?
Gosh, we have to be in touch more often, Kristen. Well, I was confused. I actually thought you were, going tonight, or
Yeah.
whatever. But anyway.
That was last week. I was there in person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I had a little trouble getting on tonight, but got there eventually.
Yeah. Well, Rabbi had a terrible phone issue, so I thought maybe something was tied in, and he just couldn't get it going. So I figured you were there. I'll send you a text and see what's going on. But all's well that ends well.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Oh,
Hello,
great.
David. I haven't seen you in a very long time. How are you?
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Yeah.
Leslie, all right. Yeah. My mom's in the hospital.
Oh, no.
Yeah, she had a hematoma last Saturday. She had to call
Yeah.
911 and they rushed her in and the whole thing, had surgery. and
Oh, geez.
I don't know when
Oh,
she's gonna
dear.
come home, but that's her deal. So I'm just kind of hanging out here because I kind of have to be on call. I kind of have to go up there and get stuff from her apartment and all that kind of thing. So just kind of hanging
Yeah.
out in town. Yeah,
Wow.
I think she'll be all right. You just got
I
you might have to
certainly
be in
hope
there for like
so.
another week. Yeah,
Well, certainly hope so.
yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, well, listen, we have to keep her in our prayers. That's the most important thing, and, hope she has a good recovery.
Yeah,
Goodness.
yeah.
Yeah. Hi,
She's
Ken.
got
I see you're there too.
Yes. Hope everybody's doing well.
Yeah, I think so. Anita's still on mute there. She can't tell us anything.
No, well, Anita, you have to unmute, and we have to see your face. Oh, well.
Oh, well, is
Oh,
right.
well,
Small group on here tonight, though, but
yes.
that's okay.
That's okay. I think between, the temple and us, it's a good, I'm happy to be here.
Oh,
Really.
definitely.
There's something about Friday night. It just kind of like takes all the wish, everything out of the week. God bless you. Must be true.
Yes.
So do you feel like somewhat of an empty nester now that Tamara's moved out?
Yes, I really miss her.
I
And
bet.
for a little while, we were trying to meet every weekend for lunch. And then she went on this crazy diet that the doctor put her on.
Well, that was his choice then, I guess. Oh,
yeah, it's a diet that's designed to fix the levels, the health of her intestines. Apparently, she has the wrong mix of bacteria in her intestines. So they're trying to fix that. And it's taking a very long time. And she's still on this crazy diet, which means we can't meet for lunch at all.
really?
But it is starting to work in that she has more energy. Her mind's a little clearer. And she's actually lost a whole bunch of weight because it's apparently fixing her metabolism. So
is it some kind of an elimination diet?
I don't know. The closest thing you could call it to would be a keto diet, but it's really not that either. It's even more restrictive than a keto diet, exactly what she's able to eat. It's really crazy. But it's working, and we're hoping she's not on it too much longer.
Well, it's like resetting her whole body chemistry, probably.
That's exactly what it's doing. And it takes a while, obviously, to do that. So
yeah. Well, it's always challenging, digestive issues and all that stuff. Goodness gracious.
Yes.
Oh, boy. So, well, it's a good thing she's not around with Jenny's cooking.
Yes, that would be difficult. Link has a hard enough time with his, because he's on the keto diet.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. His diabetes doctor put him on a keto a couple of years ago.
Really?
Several years ago, yeah. And it's done really good for him. He's watched very closely on it. He has to monitor his blood sugars continuously. He's got a little patch that feeds to his phone and to his doctor's office as well, so they can monitor it constantly.
Is he type 1 or type 2?
He's type 2, but for years it was so totally out of control, they couldn't even figure out how to control it with insulin.
Wow.
So it's always been a problem, and his is starting to come under control, especially after they figured out that he's actually gluten sensitive. This is almost to the point where he's celiac. So he's had to cut all gluten out of his diet entirely.
Holy moly.
Which in our
He's married to the wrong person right now.
exactly. I mean,
Holy moly. Oh, God.
it's really crazy. But the result of it, interestingly enough, was that the other day he decided it was a special day, so he was going to break his diet to a certain point, in that he actually had some potatoes, which is something that normally just sends his blood sugar crazy.
Well, that
But
was, yes.
it didn't even budge the slightest.
Wow.
And they figured the real problem here was all of the gluten. So
Wow. Yeah,
So
but I mean, if when you're diabetic, you have to watch anything white because it all turns to sugar.
but
whether it's
apparently,
white rice or white potatoes or whatever.
yeah,
So.
but apparently he can eat those things in moderation as long as he has absolutely no gluten in his diet.
Oh, that's great then.
Yeah, so it's
And there's
I
so
guess
much.
it's just
There are so many products that are gluten free now, but knowing Jenny, she's going to probably make things that are gluten free.
not as much. It's kind of funny. She did the other day when she was making pancakes for everybody. Made him his special gluten-free pancakes, which taste absolutely terrible. But they don't taste anything like regular pancakes.
Well,
but he says they're tolerable.
Tell her to experiment, because my sister is a baker, and she has learned using so many different flours.
Oh,
And my niece is gluten intolerant also. So every time, the family gets together, she always bakes something wonderful, and everybody tastes it. So I mean, I'm sure she's going to perfect that if she
needs to. Yeah. Right now, Link is just plain avoiding baked goods. He says, no, I really don't need it, because he's still trying to lose that last little bit of weight.
Oh boy.
And so
he and Tamara can have a contest.
Exactly. But as he said, he is actually now under 200 pounds for the first time since he was in middle school.
Wow. How tall is he?
He's 6 feet.
Oh, wow. So that's a lot of weight. Yeah. To be carrying around for a long time.
Yeah, he's been carrying around for a very long time. So, but for the first time, he's actually under 200 pounds.
Well, that's really amazing.
Oh, yeah, it really is. So he's doing great. So whenever Jennifer bakes, because she has to continue to bake all the time anyway, that's Jennifer. So Elena and I have a little bit of whatever she's baking, and then she gives it all to the neighbors.
Boy, I wish I lived in your neck of the woods, because I'm not a sweet eater, but really good stuff. I have a little piece, and that's it. I have issues that I can't have a lot of sugar. I have hypoglycemia, so it's almost like a diabetic diet that you have to watch sugar, because I have too much insulin. So
yeah, exactly. So it's
so it was good though, for cooking for Larry and me. It was basically the same, way of eating and everything. So it wasn't that terrible.
Yeah. So
anyway,
it's interesting. Yeah.
Well, listen, I'm going to get going. I didn't really eat dinner yet. I've been just snacking on little things here. And David, I wish your mom good health.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And by the way, Kristen, I don't know if you were on, but David graduated.
Did he?
Yes.
Did you
keeping it a secret?
He has. When did you graduate?
May 8th. Yeah. So a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. Finally after too many years of chasing that degree. Yeah, it finally happened. So.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you. I got to figure out what the next move is going to be now. I don't know. I want to do grad school, but I don't know where, when, or how I'm going to afford it. So I'm checking into all
You'll
of that.
figure it out.
Yeah. What field is it you wanted to do?
Well, I mean, the degree I have now is in film and video production, which I'm already sort of done and doing. I've got some TV projects coming up I'm working on. But I'd like the master's to be in like English lit or writing, something to do with actually writing, combining like writing skills for basically combining the two fields together, because the stuff I'm working
Very
on now actually involves writing for television. So
very good.
I like to write anyway. So yeah.
David, don't discount applying for different kinds of grants or, scholarships or whatever. You never know. 100 years ago, when Lisa is my oldest, so when she was going to school, getting ready to go to college, we went to a wonderful seminar at one of the local colleges, and they said, never rule out anything. You never know, something about your backgrounds or whatever, there might be a scholarship just sitting there for you, and never rule out that you can't afford a school, because you always have your safe schools, but apply everywhere. Apply to some that you think are out of reach, and those are the ones that might come through.
Yeah, I know when I didn't go back and do college until I was 39, almost 40, when I started college. And I was surprised at how many grants and scholarships I actually qualified for, because they were grants specifically for people who were not straight out of high school.
Yeah. Yep. So that makes it a special category. And you never know your backgrounds. I don't know, your, family chemistry or whatever, but there's a crazy scholarship out there in a certain school for, some unusual kind of thing.
It is.
That's true. It's true. I was getting one the first time around when I first went to USC a million years ago, because I went and then I left, worked professionally, and then decided to go back years ago, which is why I'm graduating now. I essentially dropped out for a long time and then went back. Anyway, the first time around, every semester I was getting one for it was just $500, but it really helped.
It
in books, and all I had to do was write an essay. That was it. It was some random thing I found online. I just wrote an essay, turned it in, $500. Did that every semester.
The fact that you've, taken a span to complete your education, that's something in your favor right there. And you've had the experience, you know how to support yourself. All these things are, good things.
One day I'm gonna figure it out.
Part of your resume.
I wish 18-year-old me was the student that 40-something-year-old me is now.
I
I'm an amazing student now. I'm like acing it, straight A's all the way. I'm just, killing it.
Of course.
18-year-old me, not so much. Yeah.
That's the focus.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are times when school is wasted on the young.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah. No, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, you appreciate, I found, I've taken different courses through different jobs and whatever, and it's just a whole different, perspective learning as one matures.
Yeah. It's true. What it means more, when it's coming out of your own pocket,
well, that and your focus is different. You're there to actually learn.
Drive. So Rabbi, are you listening to all this?
I just started, yes.
Well,
and I agree about I wish that I had my organizational skills now when I was 18, because it's, a lot better. Still not great.
Still working on that, right?
What I regret is I went all through school and just, breezed through with really never learning how to study. And, that came with maturity. So when I went to college, I was just blown away. I mean, I did extremely well, valedictorian of my 6th grade class, nothing under 100, for, the 6 years and whatever. And so I went, on to my higher education,